Councilman Genzel.
Present.
Supervisor Ballo.
Here.
Councilman Boardway.
Present.
Councilman Keating.
Present.
Councilman Munger, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one thing under preliminary matters tonight. Councilman Boardman.
And thank you, Mr. Supervisor. At our last meeting on July 6th, we had appointed all of the summer recreation staff and set the salary schedules. After that particular meeting, there's some reconsideration on 2 of the positions, and we are changing the hourly rate of pay to represent increased job duties and seniority. This time I make a motion that Melissa McCaffrey, who's the site supervisor and an EMT, and also designated as our camp health director, be given an hourly rate of pay of $11.75 per hour, and that Neil Gardner, who is our counselor and lifeguard, be increased to $9.50 per hour. And I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Councilman Munger.
Yes.
Councilman Genzel.
Yes.
Supervisor Ballo.
Yes.
Councilman Boardway.
Yes.
Councilman Keating.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 2 under regular business, we have correction and adoption of minutes from July 6, 2016.
And thank you again, Mr. Supervisor. I've had the opportunity to review our minutes from our July 6, 2016 meeting. They require no additions, deletions, changes, or corrections. I move they be adopted.
Second.
Councilman Munger.
Yes.
Councilman Genzel.
No.
Supervisor Ballo.
Yes.
Councilman Boardway.
Yes.
Councilman Keating.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 2 under regular business is the consideration of all fund bills. Councilman Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. At this time, I have had the opportunity to review all the bills in the abstract. This time, I'd like to make a motion to approve all the fund bills totaling $412,000 or $412,229.83.
I'll second that.
Councilman Munger.
Yes.
Councilman Genzel.
Yes.
Supervisor Ballo.
Yes.
Councilman Boardway.
Yes.
Councilman Keating.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Item number 3 is correspondence. We have correspondence tonight from the Planning Board agenda draft minutes of June 28, 2016, the Zoning Board of Appeals application for variance, public hearing notification, Conservation Advisory Council agenda, attendance record. We also have correspondence from the Planning Board with policy adoption, which we are sending over to the town attorney to review. And a summer planning board and zoning board schedule, which is the planning board meeting on July 19th. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Oh, okay. Yeah, zoning board school reminder. I apologize. Item number 4 under new business, request from the floor, please come up and state your name and address. Time limit 3 minutes per person.
Leo Jensen, 8749 South Greenbrier Terrace, Boston, New York here. Our beautiful town is getting ruined by signs. I think it's ridiculous and they look disgusting. I think we ought to put up flowers instead of signs. Please take them down. That goes for everybody in this building. There's some out in the other parts of towns, other towns that have these signs up too. I think it's ridiculous. I do believe that they should come down. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
Ginger Jensen, 8749 Greenbrier Terrace, Boston. I'm concerned about those signs in our community. I was wondering, what is the time period that a yard sign can stay up?
I think it's the maximum time is 30 days.
And who regulates those signs?
It would be our building inspector and code enforcement officer.
is it being enforced? Some of those signs have been up a lot longer.
I think action is being taken on it, and from what I understand, notices have been sent to those property owners who do have signs up, and it's my understanding that some of them have been cited into court. So it's my understanding that it is in the court process.
What is the criteria of a long sign?
I couldn't tell you offhand without taking a look at the code.
Maybe I should get a sign that said support Frontier Central School, just because I work there and I do my job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe everyone else should do the same where they work.
Frank Wasowski, 5461 Sherwood Road, Town of Hamburg, but that's my mailing address. All right, first of all, Legislator Mills, I'm glad to see you. You may be a little interested in what I have to say. A little over a week ago, I counted 87 10-wheel dump trucks full of fill. I talked to a young lady on Rockwood Road. She counted 115 loads. Where did the fill come from is question number one. I hope somebody on the town board or somebody here knows where it came from. Had the EPA or the DEC checked it out? Is there any kind of something in it, hazardous materials or anything? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because all of us around that area are on wells. And I don't want to become any nuttier than I am now. And I'd also like to thank Jeff for all he's trying to do to get us water up there. Work overtime, please. Because we need it. I don't know what's in the water. I don't know what the effect it's going to have. I did call the DEC on Michigan Avenue, and the reason I called them was a related matter to this, because years ago, a tributary to 18 Mile Creek or 18 Mile Creek was a protected stream. And now that they filled in all this, I'm wondering if the runoff or anything is going to change whatever with 18 Mile Creek, because it is a protected stream, and they told me to come in next week and talk to an officer. And the reason I'm doing this on 18 Mile Creek, I don't want Buffalo to become a Flint, Michigan. Now on another matter.
Oh, Butch, if I could please, where's the fill going?
What's that?
Where's the fill going?
Right to that big horse farm on Rockwood Road.
Okay.
Jeff is aware, remember at the concert, the lady.
As soon as you're done speaking, Mr. Wiskowski, I'll give you a report.
I might go over 3 minutes because I have another thing. A lot of people, and I'm going to direct it a little more to Bob. I don't know if you're aware, Eddie Mazer had a terrible heart attack 3 weeks ago. And he's in pretty bad shape. And you went to the New York State Police about him, his truck or something?
It's not his truck, it's his kid's truck.
The son's truck, Ted. Well, he did get a variance last year. He has permission to do it. So I'm going to recommend it.
He's got a variance to park it there. He doesn't have a variance to break any laws getting it there. Okay.
Well, how is he supposed to park it there if he
I don't know,
can't
maybe
get it
it's
there?
like, but he doesn't have any right to break the law
Well,
getting
you
it
better
there.
read the variance, because the variance gave him permission to go onto his yard and park it there.
That's because the old code enforcer said there was no weight limits on that road. Is that correct?
Who?
Butch Lozowski, I believe. Isn't that you?
No.
Yes, it is. It's right in the minutes of the planning board,
Yeah.
or the zoning board. It said, Butch Lozowski said there's no weight limit on that road. And you're
What
Butch
about the weight
Lozowski.
limit on Rockwood Road and Rice Road? What did
Are
you
we
do
talking
about that?
well, okay, if we got a problem with the dump truck, why didn't you call the state troopers on the dump truck? Why didn't you?
I don't have to call him, you like to call
No,
him.
no, what? Why didn't you?
Why would you call the state troopers
Okay.
on Eddie Mazer? You don't know what you did to that man. His heart rate is down to 40%. He was shaking and everything. 3 state police cars went up to his house with 3 troopers. He was dumbfounded. He almost passed out. The troopers had enough brains to calm him down and asked me to come over. Eddie got in his car, come over to my house. I calmed him down and everything. My point that I'm trying to make is, if any more things are slanted towards Eddie Mazer from this town board or the highway superintendent, please contact me. We'll discuss it, and I will try to talk to Mr. Mazer and keep him calm. I just don't want to see him passing away.
Well, the town board doesn't do anything. We don't enforce the roads.
Well, something, just please talk to me and together we'll talk to Eddie. I don't want him to get another
I
heart
think the
attack.
concern of Highway Superintendent when he has had the opportunity to talk to the five of
Right.
us downstairs was the weight limit on it. So when the gentleman's making the turns and bringing a full load home, he's ripping up the roads there. So Bob had to go out and fix one of the roads. My understanding was, so his concern was not that he's parking there, but he's hauling full loads home. His son is. So that was Mr. Telak's concern to the board that he talked about.
I'd like a copy of that variance and the minutes of that meeting.
I have it in my office, I'll get it.
And that's all I'm saying, because 115 trucks went up Rockwood Road and Rice Road.
But
What
like I
did you
said-
do about that?
Like I say, but I didn't see him, did you see him?
Yes, I did. I counted 87
Well,
of
then you
them.
should have called the troopers if you got a problem with
Okay.
it.
Let's let Councilman Denzel answer about the dump truck.
That's all I have.
Mr. Laskowski, I did after I had spoken with you and Mr. Schlenker at the concert, I had sent an email off to Mr. Ferguson to voice your concern about the trucks, not only bringing in fill, many trucks, where it was coming from. I have not heard yet back. He may be investigating that situation, so I hope to give you an answer. Mr. Ferguson should be back in the office on Thursday, tomorrow.
Could we demand a soil test to that from the recipient to that fill to set some of the people's mind at ease in the area that have wells?
Well, I think our first concern is where it's coming from, and if it does come out of town, the code states that they must get a fill permit. I'm sure you're quite familiar with that.
Yes, I am.
And along with that is where's the product coming from, and then it would trigger a testing if it happens to come from a known contaminated area. I mean, I wouldn't hope anybody would bring in contaminated fill without having it tested for not being contaminated anymore. Especially if they're bringing it to their horse farm. I would assume that they're filling in a low spot up there, but I certainly brought your concerns to the code enforcement officer and building inspector, and we'll follow up with him tomorrow when he's in his office hours, and we'll certainly give you a call to ease your mind up in that area, okay?
Yeah, because I not only myself, I worry about everybody there with the well.
I don't blame you one bit. The wells up there have been on the weak side for years. With
A lot of us are holding water.
Believe me, I fully understand. I've been working on it for years, and hopefully before my term's over, I can get you some water.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Joanne Stang from up on Eddy Road. Recently, we had a fire up on Cole Road. I'm sure everyone's aware of it. As a taxpayer for 3 fire companies, only 2 were called. I'm kind of wondering why Patchen wasn't called right on the spot, and Boston was called out because it was their territory. Patchen never was. As far as I'm getting, you know how you get the hearsay and everything, so that's why I'm here to get the facts. Because as far as I know, Patchen was supposed to be put on the to-call list, or whatever you call it, back in May. The fire chief, after this fire, said, well, I'll make sure that you're put on the list before the end of August. Why is it taking from May to August? And why were they not called in? Anyone? And then why at that, I'm sorry, but at that time, and I'm not pointing fingers at just Boston, because as far as I'm concerned, if Patchen was at the hall standing by, why did they not contact fire company, like Hamburg Fire Control, or the Boston Fire Chief and say, we're here with a crew, can we respond, or we're ready to respond?
I'd like to try and answer some of your questions, and Councilman Denzel, who's the liaison for the fire companies. We did hear about that. We are looking into it. We have a meeting set with Boston Fire Company next week, and once we get the date with Patchen Fire Company all at once. We as a town board contract with 3 fire companies in town.
Right.
They're their own separate identity. So once we contract with them, we decide on a dollar amount to pay them, to tax the residents, to cover the residents. Our job is to make sure that they're legally, anyone of you guys who've been liaison, feel free to jump in on it too, are following the law, the codes, the contracts set forth by the town. I heard about the incident. I have talked to the liaison. I've talked to Patchen Fire Company. I've talked to some members from Boston Fire Company. I don't want to comment on it at this point because I feel it wouldn't be fair without sitting down with both of them and having the opportunity to talk to both of them. I think in the best interest of myself, I need to get all the facts on it. I'm not a volunteer fireman. I couldn't tell you about the logistics of who's called out, when they're called out, or how to fight a fire.
When there's a fire
Yeah.
truck right up on the hill, really?
I'm not disagreeing with you on issues. I'm trying to understand why we have a local fire company that is in the middle of the town that is ready and willing to go, why they're not called out. I have the call sheet from Hammer Dispatch, how many fire companies were called, when they were called to the area, so I'm sure Councilman Genzel has the same one, the dispatch, and we'll be discussing that. So, and Councilman Genzel, if you would like to answer anything on this.
If you don't mind, Mr. Supervisor. Mrs. Stang, thank you for coming in and taking your time to come to the town board meeting and ask these important questions. Yes, for those who don't know, there was a large barn fire on Cole Road in the Boston Fire Company's district. Okay, our town's divided into 3 districts for the 3 fire companies. The run cards, as you speak of, they're called run cards. The firemen in the room understand that term. It is when certain emergency services occur, who gets called in for what type of situation, right? Typically in the town, mutual aid is immediate on a structure fire, meaning that, if there's a large fire, that it's automatic mutual aid, that they're all called in. Unfortunately, these are 3 private fire companies. We contract with them, as many of the people in the room know. Contract season came and went last year. We had a special meeting December 28th, approximately, where we signed the new contracts. And the run Patchen Fire Company was taken off of North Boston's run cars. I assume it stems from some type of personal issue, egos, whatever you want to call it. That's the fact. So here we are, year and a half later. I've over and over and over have asked why is that? Why aren't you all on each other's run cards? They're all here to serve the public and protect the public. I've been told over and over again, it's in the works, it's in the works. It's done. I've heard both of those terms. At the contract signing on December, whatever it was, 28th, I'm not quite sure the exact date, I asked again. We had the presidents, we had the chiefs, we also had some of the public sitting there. I said, is everybody on everybody's run cards? Yes. Okay, that's what we were told, the board was told. I have been in contact with the chief. Unfortunately, the chief of the Boston Fire Company's on vacation, Mr. Penrod. He texted me, and he'll tell it to you, just the way I am. I said, I'll pass along the information. This is straight from him from a text today. It was an error. Okay, that's what it's being called, as an error. Patch will be placed on the run cards in the next week or so. That's the answer I received. We were all under the impression that they were all on each other's run cards. That wasn't the case, obviously. There was questions about SOPs. We don't have Patchen's SOPs, standard operating procedure, for those that don't know what that term is. We don't have their SOPs. Well, I'm not quite sure. You have everybody's SOPs. I think there were 20 fire companies responding to that fire. Does everybody have everybody's SOPs? I don't know. Is it just, again, personal issues, egos or something? But at this point, luckily we didn't have any loss of life or animals. I know it's bad enough we lost a big structure, but the next time something, very serious could happen. As the supervisor said, we have a meeting scheduled as soon as Mr. Penrock gets back in town and the president, Dan, to meet with them and to make sure that this is not going to happen again in the future. That's about as much information as I can tell you. It's an error. Once Pat got out of work, Mr. Kane, Ed Kane was the chief on site, and he was, in charge of the situation. Mr. Penrock got out of work, immediately called patching in when he found out they weren't called.
Did you find out, did you hear why they called patching in? To help wash the fire hoses and put them away? They couldn't remember to call them one day, yeah. So I think this is something serious. I thought that the town board, when they went for the contract, is it true or not that it was in the contract that they all had to be on each other's?
It is not in the contract.
Okay, so it's
I
not
pressed
in
to
the
have that in the
contract,
contract, and the firemen, we didn't want to get into a legal situation with them. No one wants litigation. No one wants the fire companies to have to hire lawyers, and we have to hire lawyers. It's not in the contract, and
Well, I hope they really do.
assume that all companies would have on their run cards. It's not the case. Hopefully we can get this resolved immediately before there's another situation that
That's too
public
bad.
safety is a concern here.
And especially with the town, taxpayers' money, paying for these services, and then you get, this can happen.
Right, keep in mind, there's another dimension to this, and it's what we're discussing right now, and we're strictly talking about the firematic side of things. These run cards deal with the mutual aid situations, and again, as Councilman has discussed, when we sat down there a couple days after Christmas and had these contracts signed, we were of the impression that those issues were either resolved or going to be resolved, but as basically the contractors for these companies that we're hiring, we're not intimately involved in their individual SOPs, their individual directors, board of directors, things like that. But the important thing to keep in mind as far as public safety goes, when you look at the EMS side of things, we also have a separate independent emergency squad. The Boston Emergency Squad is a freestanding organization that does not have any strict affiliation with any of the fire companies, so they're not involved in this little quandrum right now with all this. From EMS standpoint, we contract with Hamlet Fire Control also, and they are guided by what the fire companies tell them as far as dispatch. But EMS calls, it's a whole different level there. What we consider a paramedic call, that call gets dispatched by Hamlet Fire Control. What happens is the district, the smaller district inside the town of Boston, that chief gets it, that fire company responds if it's an EMS level 3, level 4 call, a paramedic call. All of our chiefs in town have AEDs in their vehicles. They're responding simultaneously with the emergency squad who covers the entire town without question. It doesn't matter whose call it is per se. So just keep in mind the EMS side is separate, but this town is completely protected by some of the best and most diligent and dedicated volunteers in all of that county. So we do have that. This little issue, we can work that out, I think, and then hopefully this stuff doesn't happen again. And luckily,
We really did think it was worked out because they did answer calls to Patchen. So when Patchen was called out to a fire and they called for mutual aid, Boston did show up. So logic would tell us that they're on run cards. We don't actually go out and look for the run cards, or the double check, and logic would tell us that they were settled. But I told you when Councilman, we're going to have a meeting with them. Patchen will be present, they will be present, and we'll figure everything out.
I hope so.
There are chapters in the contract that work around that situation that don't necessarily say run cards. So I can get you a copy of the contract for your review, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Kashubek, 5550 Maple Grove Drive. I'd like to talk about the signs in town. I mean, people have a right to put up signs, it's freedom of speech. I'm also familiar with the Boston Municipal Code, I've read it thoroughly. I know that those signs are in violation, but they're also, that would apply to the Trump signs and the Safe Act signs, etc. But for some reason, only the signs that say, "I support the town clerk," are the ones that are being questioned. That's called arbitrary selective enforcement of the law. It's like if we don't care for somebody, we enforce the law. But if they're one of our friends, we just ignore the fact that they're breaking the law. It should be noted that I'm not saying that we should go out and enforce this for every single sign in town. There's such a thing called a common sense approach to government, and I think that's lacking in the town of Boston. It should be noted that the law applies to everybody, or it's no law at all. When the government or the police are above the law, then there is no law. Then all we have is a grim struggle for survival. And that's exactly what the taxpayers in Boston are experiencing now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If I may rebuttal you, Mr. Koshubik, there were complaints about those signs, and once you receive a complaint, you have to move forward with it with your...
So it's purely reactive, that our government...
Our code enforcement officer is reactive, not proactive, yes. He is.
Yes. I should also address this, I'd like to address this newsletter that went out too. This is funded by tax dollars, okay? I don't know if this is in any way supposed to be some type of a substitute for an official newspaper, but as for somebody who works in the newspaper industry, I can tell you that this is nothing more than a third-rate political rag. And I can also, it looks like it was written by a child. And on the subject of the town officials, it totally neglects to include our diligent and dedicated highway superintendent, who is an elected official, and our town clerk, who is also an elected official, and our two town justices. And to comment further on this newsletter, if you will, there's such a thing called an anachronism, where time and date are out of place. I don't think it's of any value to the citizens of this town to send out a newsletter that's announcing events. Now, this newsletter arrived today, incidentally, but it's announcing events that are forthcoming on July 12th, July 19th, July 26th, August 2nd. There's 4 anachronisms right there. If you need somebody with half a brain to read this over and edit for you, I'd be glad to stop by the town hall and dedicate a few minutes. Is there anything else you'd like to comment on, Mr. Gensel?
I'm just commenting on your comments, Mr. Koshubik.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Joe Gallagher. I'm the chief of the Patchen Fire Company, and I know there's some concerns with what's going on, so I know there's a couple of my firemen here, so I'm going to take their 3 minutes as well. This is nothing but ego, okay? And I'm going to break it wide open here for everybody to know. Gene Wachowski was chief of North Boston Fire Company when they took us off the run cards. Gene, I don't know if anybody knows, but Gene had an issue with Patchen, was a Patchen member, and left Patchen. For whatever reason, it was between the chief at the time and him. He's held that grudge for over 15 years. When he became chief of North Boston, everything was fine up until 3 months before he left office. Dan Teal, which was the chief at the time that Gene was for Boston, is his really good friend. Now, they both sat down, 3 months before they left office, and decided to take Patchen off the run cards. It was a big stick at the Patchen before I left office. New chief Tom Ricotta came in for North Boston and did the right thing. Didn't agree with what happened, put us back in the run cards immediately. Boston, on the other hand, did not. Boston wanted to cite that we had ill-trained firemen, which is not the case. we have about 28 members, and 90% of them are under the age of 25. I can't say that for any of the fire companies in town. We have a really young crew. We have a lot of interiors and some that still need to get it. It was brought up to the Hamburg Chiefs Association from Gene that only 3 people in the fire company had interior, and it wasn't any of the chiefs. I can bring in a whole list of state courses that my chiefs have, and it's 30 state courses wide. It's long, okay? From intermediate to advanced firefighter to mass confidence to school bus rescue to all that stuff, okay? I, like my 9-1 and 9-3, came from a different fire company. 1 came from Jameson Road, and 2 came from Hillcrest Fire Company in Orchard Park. Anybody knows Orchard Park? They are very strict on courses and classes that you have to take in a training. I myself have been in over 30 plus structure fires during my time with Hillcrest. So is my 9-1. And Jameson Road, the 9-3, same thing. So the leadership and the excuse of they don't have leadership or the training is BS, okay? That was the excuse. And not only that, Gene presented to their fire company that you, Marty, were the one that told them it was okay. That was a big lie, okay? But that was
Okay to do what?
okay to take us off the run cards, okay? That they said that Dan Teal, at the time was the chief of Boston, and Gene Wilkowski sat with you in your office and you told him it was okay. That's what they said. That's what they presented to their fire company.
And what do you think about that?
It's BS.
And do I have any right to take anybody off?
No. So it just, you know, and then they claim that, well, the response times were bad. You look at throughout this whole county, unless you are a big fire company like Hamburg or Gettsville or Orchard Park, run times are going to suffer a little bit, especially in a town where it's struggling to get members on all 3 companies. So I can't ask my guys to stay home every weekend and not spend time with their family. That's a little unfair, okay? Now, I've never taken anybody off my run cards. Even after these games were played, they stayed on and they have stayed on because I feel that I'm above all this petty ego crap. So then there was a charge of, okay, well, they play around at drill. Well, there was a case that 2 members put cones on Gene's truck, traffic cones, okay, which firemen have fun sometimes, lightens the mood, you know, and those 2 members were no longer Patchen members. They're now Boston firemen, and they're still holding it against us that it's inappropriate behavior when we don't have those members anymore, and for good reason. So this is a big ego thing. I don't know what Pat's thinking is. He told me back in May we were going on